It's June the 4th, 2024. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I'm going to be your host. I'm Dana Durnford. I'm also known as the nuclearproctologist.org. And you can call into these shows at 709-589-4406. 4406. So does 1,000 U.S. nuclear tests prove the nuclear industry was determined to contaminate the entire United States, the water, the air, the land, and to do it permanently? It's hard to argue with something like that, isn't it? Like when you have the evidence is so clear. We're going to play a little clip.
The world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
I guess we all felt that way one way or another, right? I would imagine so. Oh, crap. So we detonated 1,000 nuclear tests, even the nuclear tests that went into the ground, vented at high speed into the atmosphere and into the ecosystem, the biosphere. So, the radiation, let me word this properly, I guess. RECA, the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, is going to sunset in 3 days. And we're not hearing any of the media out there whatsoever. We're not hearing the anti-nuclear brigade out there. We're not hearing the control opposition like Greenpeace out there, or Beyond Nuclear, which these are controlled opposition, right? They're designed to displace real people like me and you. And they're not out there raising the alarm. The Radiation Compensation Act, radiation exposure, there was the original Manhattan Project and the original nuclear testing, so to speak. These people just simply weren't told anything. There was a lot of secrecy, and they never had a chance to protect themselves. And that the academics actually used them as guinea pigs for the rest of their lives and their children's lives. And there was a lot of this hoodwinking we want to cover. We've got a bunch of studies to cover. We're going to show you the architects of these lies, too, right away. But remember the duck and cover, dum-dum-dum, where they like dum-dum, which is an insult. Someone calls you dumb, that's an insult, right?
Dum-dum, diddle-dum-dum, diddle-dum-dum, diddle-dum-dum. There was a turtle by the name of Bert, and Bert the turtle was very alert. When danger threatened him, he never got hurt. He knew just what to do. He ducked and covered, ducked and covered.
He did what we all must learn to do. You
and you
and you
and you, duck and cover.
Yeah, because everybody got a turtle shell, and ducking and covering is going to protect nobody from radioactive fallout. It's literally going to protect nobody from the radioactive fallout, right? And so who's the architects behind all this propaganda and deceit and dishonesty? The International Commission for Radiation Protection, United Nations. UNSCLEAR, United Nations. RECA, United Nations. International Atomic Energy Agency, United Nations. The National Council on Radiation Protection and Measurements, United Nations. And then the United Nations is directing many of the other groups. So you got a single group with all kinds of fractions, and all of them are pretending that they're independent, and they all back each other's lies. And there's no checks and balances. And they're the people who are the most likely doing everything in their power to stop any kind of compensation acts. Which at the podium is Kathleen Higley. Incredibly educated, these people, by the way. They got the education to get that particular job to come out and tell you a lie. And they're at the National Press Club. I'm going to play this couple of minutes video because it's very important to see what's going on in the background. And we'll talk about that after this little video.
When I was trying to pull this talk together, not only will I sort of get a little philosophical about the impacts and the like and try to put things in context, but I also wanted to talk a little bit about who are these radiation experts that get trotted out in events like this or that get to participate in various activities and analysis to make pronouncements about is something safe or not safe. And if you look, you'll see organizations that are often represented, the ICRP, International Commission on Radiological Protection, a premier organization. You'll see UNSCEAR and ERPA. So UNSCEAR is the United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation. ERPA, the International Radiation Protection Association. The IAEA and some of its folks, the International Atomic Energy Agency. Our own U.S. NCRP. And then there are a number of other organizations. So there's PAHO, there's the Health Physics Society, there's World Health Organization. All of these will bring in, as necessary, experts to speak to you on issues related to radiation protection, radiation safety, and impacts. But if you go a little deeper and you start looking at these organizations, the ICRP, for example, very well known, it's been operating nearly 100 years, not quite. Main commission, 10 people. It's got 5 standing committees. So it's 100-ish folks. I lead one of the 5 committees. If you look at the United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation that looked at the effects from Chernobyl, from Fukushima, from other areas, and that has about 30, roughly, countries that are represented in that group. If you start teasing through these pictures, you're going to see the same people on every one of those organizations. So the same people from ICRP are on UNSCEAR, they're in ERPA. If you look at the NCRP, again, the U.S. organization that advises the country on radiation protection issues, it's 100 people, a lot of gray-haired 100 people. And most of them are part of UNSCEAR, are part of ERPA, are part of ICRP, participate in IAEA. So the result, or the real world, is that there's not that many folks that really do radiation safety, radionuclide transport, dose calculations, all of this in the world. It's a pretty small club, and we wear 20 hats. Today I put on 3 pins, and I could put on a whole bunch more, but Health Physics Society, ICRP, Certified Health Physicist, I've got NCRP on there, I've done IAEA, and so the point is, we're a small group, you should cherish us.
They should be prosecuted for crimes against humanity, right? These are actual monsters. And it's easy to find them. They participate in all these entities that are designed to make you sick for the rest of your life. There is no safe dose of anthropogenic man-made radiation. And so anybody was in the way of radioactive fallout, particularly say from the nuclear test, there's zero possibilities they didn't get some kind of illness or disease or autoimmune deficiency or injuries, illnesses or cancers. There's many, many diseases besides cancer. And on top of that, your immune system is compromised. Excuse me. Human sex ratio at birth after atmospheric weapons testing. So I'm simulating radioactive fallout because you can't see it or smell it or hear it or feel it or touch it or taste it or pick it up or throw rocks at it or perceive it or something like that, right? Human sex ratio at birth after atmospheric weapons testing. Now, why are you doing studies like that for? Because they're looking for the entire planet was contaminated by radioactive fallout. And to call it weapons testing is insane because it's the same weapons you use in a nuclear war, so the radioactive fallout is the same. You can be thousands of miles away from the bomb blast, but you still get sick and die latent, or because of the illnesses, the latency of the illnesses and diseases and complications, right? Trends in birth and birth sex ratios in the vicinity of research reactors. Why are they doing studies on births and birth sex ratios? And what that means is looking for more males than females. But I mean, the studies should be continuing forever, looking for Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes. And autism and Down syndrome are the first studies they do after a nuclear accident. What does that tell us, I wonder? Trends in newborn sex ratios. They're doing these studies because they're looking for radioactive effects. And when you see all kinds of studies, then that's very concerning because more males, the less population. And then the birds and the insects, the animals and everything are much more vulnerable. Who's going to have a RECA for the birds and the insects and the animals and the butterflies and the unicorns, right? You know, I just said that to be, I shouldn't use the word charming, but to be humorous, I think, because there's very little humor in what we do. Ionizing rate, in fact, is you're more likely to find a unicorn post-nuclear industry than you were before the nuclear industry because of the mutations, right? Ionizing radiation's human gender proportions at birth. A concise review of literature and complementary analysis of the historical and recent data. Human sex ratio at birth and residential proximities in nuclear facilities. Why are you doing human sex ratios near nuclear facilities, I wonder? Because you can't contain the radiation. The fuel pools are hemorrhaging radiation. Trends in the human sex odds at birth in Europe and the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. So why is there so many studies on the human sex ratios? Because that's how they study large contamination. They did on sex ratio studies in the entire Europe post-Chernobyl, right? And, you know, they're also looking for autism and Down syndrome in Pacific because that's so blatant of a, it's not latent, right? It happens when the children are born, becomes very evident. Not all the time, but the majority of it. It's congenital malformations is basically, it's undeniable. See? Secondary sex ratio and trends in associated gender-specific births near nuclear facilities in France and Germany. Ionizing radiation, human gender proportions at birth. We already looked at that one. So this area of the continental United States caused by 3 or more nuclear clouds. So you had to have at least 3 different bomb clouds traveling over the same sectors before it made it onto the map. Because if you put 1,000 plumes on that map, you're not going to see any map, right? And so in the 1955, I think this one is, and I'm going to break this down for you because this is one of the most important facets. I'll come into the picture with you.
You would receive less radiation in the middle of a tall building than you would receive on the top or bottom floors.
Because the radiation fallout will pulse right through the building. And so in a skyscraper, each room is full of furniture and cabinets and cupboards and closets and everything else, right? And that'll help slow down some of the radiation. But you're still not going to escape it. So gamma from 137 will pulse through the 600 feet. So you can be in an air-contained building or a bomb shelter, completely contained, but the radiation can still pulse through and get you.
Because there would be more distance and partitions between you and the source of the radiation. The fallout particles which would cover the roof and the ground around the building.
Are pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second. But there's another effect goes on. You got gammas, alphas, neutrons, and betas are all doing that, right? But when they meet each other, because they're all pulsing close, they're all slightly different speeds, but they're all very, very close to the speed of light. And so when they hit each other, they don't mingle. They don't interact. They reflect off each other. It's a braking effect, but it's at the speed of light. And that's known as an X-ray. And so when you have a lot of rainfall or radioactive fallout, then everybody and everything, all the creatures, are getting full body X-rays. On top of the ingestion and the consumption, washing in it, drinking in it, cooking in it, doing your laundry in it, sitting in your hot tubs and everything else. You couldn't get me in a hot tub post-Fukushima. Oh, let me go back to that.
You would receive side. And finally, along with decay rate and distance, we have still another and very important ally. Mass.
Yeah, and so they didn't tell people, for instance, to stay indoors during the nuclear testing. They say do it if there's a nuclear war. But the nuclear war and the nuclear testing are the exact same bombs. So when there was testing, the whole country should have stayed indoors, otherwise they all got poisoned. And the poison, of course, doesn't need to affect them directly. Originally, it can now attack them through the food sources, through their drinking water, through their ventilation systems, and the children through the toys, the fact that they're close to the ground than you are. But the thing is, we destroy the entire ecosystem in increments over many decades, so it's imperceivable to those who don't understand the science.
When highly radioactive fallout covers our immediate area, we can shield ourselves through the most dangerous period by using the sheer weight of any material.
Yeah, but you didn't. You done the nuclear testing, which is the same thing as a nuclear war. The radioactive fallout was the same thing. So they're saying that if Russia or China or their perceived enemies detonated a nuclear bomb in their country, the radioactive fallout, when it finally get to them, they should shelter in place. But they didn't do it for the nuclear war / nuclear testing, where they had 1,000 nuclear weapons. And a lot of these weapons, of course, are different variations. I've got a list of them coming up for you. The effects of radiation on the reproductive system. And so when they say they don't know much about it, remember who the gatekeepers were. I played that before for you. And that's what they are. Down syndrome time clustering in Belarus after Chernobyl. Down syndrome in Scotland after Chernobyl. Or not necessarily Chernobyl, right? The influences of the post-Chernobyl fallout on birth defects, again though because nuclear, they're looking for Down syndrome. The influence of post-Chernobyl fallout on birth defects, abortion rates in Austria. Infant mortality after Chernobyl. When you see the blue names, that's the academics getting a great big paycheck. And the idea is to downplay it. Their job basically for the majority of them is to downplay. Most of these studies are meant to downplay the adverse effects. And they're a penny a dozen, right, for these people. Prenatal loss of 400 male fetuses in the Czech Republic after Chernobyl. And so we're going to use these types of studies to have a comparison of what radioactive fallout actually is and the problems associated with it. Now, last night they chopped out 22 minutes of my video. They actually kicked me off the internet twice. We've never seen them do that to me. And they did literally try to destroy my computer. Completely unfunctional. I had to shut the thing hard shut down. So tonight I'm actually recording it as we're going in. I'm going to post my shows every night up at BitChute. And so if you don't watch the video in the first 12 hours, it's best to watch it up on my BitChute channel. Because you know it's not going to be snipped. And you know at that point they might be putting software into the video. They've been doing it for over 2 years to us. Where the video gets shorter or the video gets longer. It doesn't make at 12 hours, right? And they were able to do this kind of real time too. Probably 8-9 years ago, we did remember the videos. I've actually downloaded that documentation. Incidences of legal abortion, congenital abnormalities in Hungary. And I'm a little bit upset because they're going to make me do a bunch of extra work every single night from here on out. I'm not impressed at all. And so we can't keep letting them do this. We have to fight back, so I have to work even harder every day. There's going to be payback for that one coming. I'm coming after these people for what they're doing. Incidents of legal abortions, congenital abnormalities in Hungary. So it's not just equal, like United States, it's not just equal to a single little area, a couple of counties or a couple of states. It travels very long distances and very harmful. No matter where it shows up, it's very harmful. That's the takeaway. That's the consensus. You'll see that if you hang out. Congenital abnormality registries in Belarus. Pregnancy outcome in Finland, in Europe. Legally induced abortions in Denmark, Europe, after Chernobyl. Incidents of legal abortions in Sweden after Chernobyl. Prenatal mortality, England and Wales. They actually closed 9,400 farms in Ireland, Scotland, United Kingdom. Pregnancy outcome in Norway after Chernobyl. Early infant mortality in West Germany before and after Chernobyl. Why are you doing studies like that? 256, assessment of the influence of Chernobyl on birth defects, abortion rates in Austria. Pregnancy outcome. Why are you doing all these studies? The effects of the accidents at the Chernobyl atomic energy plant on the outcome of pregnancy. Non-thyroid cancers. And they like to use thyroid and pretend that thyroid is only cancer. Of course, they're when you only think about cancer, and the thyroid is what makes the hormones for your entire body. And so they direct you away from the hormones and talk about cancer, right? Which is real. But if you don't need cancer to have absurd, catastrophic effects on your body because you're producing radioactive hormones. And if you're, not everything goes into the thyroid. Of course, other gammas will also go, not just iodine-131. Many gammas will go, cesiums will go into the thyroid, for instance. But it's not just cesium you got to worry about, right? Fallout from Chernobyl accident, overall cancer rates in incidences in Finland. Again, when you talk about cancer, you're missing 1,000 other illnesses because your immune system is compromised. And you're more susceptible to everything. Pathogens and viruses that were normally harmless. Non-thyroid cancer incidents in Belarus residents exposed to Chernobyl fallout in childhood and adolescence. Chromosome aberrations in Norwegian reindeer following the Chernobyl. It doesn't just affect humans, it affects every single species and the flora, the fauna, the biota. The biosphere itself the atmosphere becomes damaged. Because it's pulsing energy. You have these invisible snowstorms, pulsing energy almost at the speed of light. Estimated lifetime effective dose to hunters and their families in the 3 most contaminated countries in Sweden after Chernobyl. Difference in effects of radiation on the abundance of animals in Fukushima, Chernobyl. So this has absurd effects. And humans, of course, are right in the middle of it all. Delayed effects of accidental radiation exposure. 15-year follow-up. So a lot of illnesses and diseases are latent. They might not show up for a decade or 2 or 3 even, depending on how much radiation. But it will show up. A single atom in your body will try to build a tumor around it. It thinks of it as a sarcophagus to contain it. It'll do that every day, nonstop, till it finally builds a sarcophagus around the radiation because it's a foreign object. Your body doesn't, there's nothing on the planet, no insects or birds or mammals or animals, to have an immune trigger to defend against it. There is no defense. So if you get a splinter in your finger, your body will try to push it out. Your body will try to force it out of the original hole. Population exposures, the iodine-131 releases from Hanford, preterm birth, infant mortality, fetal death. They actually have a graveyard up by Hanford for congenital malformations. There's around 700 dead children there. Chernobyl cover-up. Actually, most of the original records disappeared within the first year. No one's ever seen them since. So a lot of the people that were not volunteers, nobody was volunteering. They were conscripted. They were jacked right off the streets and buses by the military with guns, right? Just like you're seeing in Ukraine today. Radioactive fallout, neural tube defects. Global implications of Chernobyl. There's global implications. Weapons testing was just, I mean, my goodness, right? The French Polynesians from the French test was equal to about a Nagasaki bomb every week for 12 years. We destroyed all the tropical paradises with nuclear weapons. Something that we can't use. We can't use nuclear weapons. We finally acknowledged that all these years later. But they knew back then. Once they detonated their first 100 bombs, like how many of their 1,000 nuclear bombs didn't detonate? There was like 1 or 2, but it was because it was a very exotic thing they were doing. It wasn't because it was, the same old, and it happened to be a dud. No. There is no logical reason to detonate 1,000. Some of these nuclear weapons were equal to 1,000 Nagasaki plutonium bombs, like Castle Bravo, for instance. The Soviet Union detonated one bomb so big, it was equal to 3,800 Nagasaki 15 kiloton or so bombs. 3,800. 3,800 going off at one time. The radioactive fallout is the same thing, see? Castle Bravo, there was a $5,000 square mile lethal dose area, according to the government anyway. I'll play the clip for you. It's really something. It's just a short clip. Yeah, they jacked 22 minutes off my video last night. And so now I got to record everything, every single show, and post it up at a different site so that at least people have the options. I am not happy about this at all. It's a silly amount of work I do already. And I'm abused constantly by the industry. They got nobody else to pick on. They really don't. Just bear with me. There's a lot of software running in the background. So it'll take a few extra seconds for me to find it. So global implications of Chernobyl. Global implications. it's not implications, it's a fact. The radioactive fallout is actually, it covers the entire planet, typically in 3 or 4 weeks. She's messing with me. I get down to one word. If not, we'll keep moving forward. We got a lot to get through anyway. I had clipped out. It was 1954, right? I don't know if this is the right clip or not.
The whole picture of fallout contamination becomes of increasing importance with high-yield weapons. In one program,
I'll turn it up
drone
for you,
ships
sorry.
were sent into fallout areas to evaluate the worth of a washdown system for ship decontamination. We found we could measure fallout even in large ocean areas by making aerial surveys using extremely sensitive radiation detection equipment and with surface craft such as tugs and destroyers. As a result of these measurements, we were able to document for the first time fallout data from high-yield detonations. It is now known that fallout from the larger castle shots blanketed areas of more than 5,000 square miles with radioactive material that would have been lethal to unprotected personnel. This one result gives a new insight into a method for using high-yield weapons in both strategic and tactical situations.
So 5,000 square miles is a lethal dose anywhere in that area. But the studies now, the studies now are shown. Let me dig that up right quick for you. The Bikini Atoll is over a 2019 study. I'll bring it up for you. Just 1 second here. I'm off my game tonight. There's so much work. We had massive rain all day today. I had to run to the city today to pick up odds and ends. Because it's a rainy day, there's not much I can do about it. Might as well try to be productive. This study was July the 15th, 2019. You can see the people in the study. And what it is, the radioactive fallout from the testing program, the fourth sentence in blue coming down the bottom, contaminated a huge swath of land and ocean in the Marshall Islands, extending over 1 million square kilometers, and severely impacted the habitability of the affected atolls. Well, I mean, when you got 1 million square kilometers that is still massively radioactive, 70 years later, it's stunning, right? The potential for disease initiation by inhaled beta emitter or gammas or alphas and neutrons. Dental abnormalities in people living in radionuclide contaminated regions. So there's retina pigment, abnormal retina from radiation poisoning in the eyes. Leukemia after the iodine 130, the issues never go away, right? Prenatal radiation-induced brain and cognitive impairments, schizophrenia. So there's a lot of mental issues. There's Alzheimer's, dementia, there's autism, Down syndrome, diabetes, of course. But schizophrenia, there's neural tube defects, there's it's just a heartbreaking. Now, when you go back to the testing, the nuclear war, we're going to cover a lot of that coming up right after that little video. And the reason of this video is I want you to see Kilroy was here. What they're doing is let me turn the volume down a bit, is the animals that they took out and put on the ships. And anybody's been down this rabbit hole, no pun intended, they were very methodical, right? Everything, they've done this on land, the same thing on land too, right? And they have all these animals, and we don't get access to those studies because they're all horrific, right? So they don't want that out there in the public. But we know that they've done that. So where are the studies? How come we haven't come across any of those studies? And they were very methodical. Every single nuclear test, they had thousands of animals, including dogs, including strange animals you wouldn't expect, otters included, right? Yeah, these are, the industry knew exactly what it was doing way back in the day, right? There was no, and then, to have these soldiers, and we see so many depictions of that. I guess some of that pictures that are coming up after. So this is not all the tests, right? This is different countries too. USA, barge test, they love doing the barge. And the barge on the ocean test would liberate the sulfur. So it was uranol, sulfur peroxide, hydrogen buckyballs. These sulfur peroxide, hydrogen buckyballs, these are able to ingest uranium, plutonium, the curium, the americium, the neptuniums, the strontiums, and to become very mobile, very hot, very longevity, and very dangerous. Basically, the best way to describe them are hot particles. And so they attack everything forever. It's an assault on the entire biosphere and the ecosystem. There have been 2,121 tests done since the first, involving 2,476 nuclear devices. But just the Soviet Union's most powerful bomb that we know about, the 50 megaton, was equal to 3,800 Nagasaki bombs. Right? So if you put all the bombs equal to the Nagasaki, Hiroshima type size bombs, and if you go look at the carnage, if you go look at presentations I've done on that, you'll see all the studies on it. That was equal to somewhere around 33,000 Nagasaki bombs going off on our planet. The animosity equivalent. Because the Hiroshima, as far as I know, was the only uranium bomb that we used, so to speak. Everything else was plutonium. And that's what the fuel cycle, the nuclear fuel cycle for power plants is all about, is getting the fuel to the point where it's a breeder. It's making perpetual, these are perpetual machines, right? The fuel pools at all the laboratories, national laboratories, and all nuclear fuel plants, power plants, the fuel pools are perpetual disease factories, right? So you had all these different countries, and you see the US, the UK, France, China, India, and Pakistan. Peaceful nuclear explosion. It's the stupidest thing imaginable. Peaceful nuclear explosion. It's like a peaceful passenger plane full of people crashing. It was a peaceful... They didn't even know nothing. They could only scream for about 10 seconds, and then it was all over. So it was okay. They didn't suffer too much. That's their personalities, these people who talk like that, right? Operation Plowshare. Total yield was 196,000 kilotons. Let's bring up some math, because this stuff gives me the absolute woolies. 196,000. 196,000. So 196,000 divided by kilotons, divided by 15 kiloton from Nagasaki, is equal to 13,000 Nagasaki bombs, 0.66666 appropriately. So Operation Plowshare was equal to 13,000 Nagasaki bomb shares, or Nagasaki bombs going off. 13,000, see? Let's look for some more here. The numbers are just unbelievable, aren't they? You got the Trinity test, Operation Crossroads, the Socorro, New Mexico, the Marshall Islands, Operation Greenhouse, which is appropriate because that's what radiation is. It's a greenhouse effect. Where now, like, even before Fukushima, you couldn't go anywhere with a Geiger counter where it wasn't clicking away, right? Which means it's pulsing energy at the speed of light, this radioactive fault that you can't normally perceive. And energy doesn't go away. So every pulse of energy adds to the ecosystem. Now, when you got an invisible snowstorm covering the entire planet, pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second for decades, and it never stops. They dump so much into the ocean, so much into the landfills. The Manhattan Project had they just threw all caution, and they knew they killed all these animals. They knew the harmful effects of it, but they still insisted on dumping. Like, it's hard to comprehend the quantity and qualities that they actually dumped. And we were talking about it last night. It might have got erased because they chopped off 22 minutes of my video from last night. I've never seen them do that before. And we've only been doing this show for over a decade straight. And it just makes you wonder, right, how evil... When is evil too evil? You got Ivory Mike, Castle Bravo, of course, which is equal to 1,000 Nagasaki bombs going off at one time. What they done to the Marshall Islands was equal to a Nagasaki bomb a day for 12 years. That was the animosity equivalent, according to some of the experts. And when they done it in the ocean, they created all this, and they acknowledged, because there was 100 and something videos released 14, 15 years ago by the government, declassified, of nuclear test videos. And the ocean testing, they acknowledged that the ships that they were using for, blast damage was also so radioactive. They were hot, right? You couldn't go near these things, so they scuttled them. They sunk them with munitions. Which again is one of the most evil things conceivable, to put that into the ecosystem like that. To go out and atomize islands, tropical islands, and destroy it forever. No one can ever go out and enjoy those tropical, beautiful paradises. And these were the nurseries of the ocean, too. Important keystone species nurseries. Like I say, we covered this so much for so long. The one thing that we can prove is that this industry takes great pride in being evil. 1,000 nuclear weapons was designed to contaminate the entire country and the rest of the planet, no doubt. But it was definitely designed to contaminate the entire country. And for Las Vegas, they used to wait for the wind to blow to Las Vegas. They were considered disposable. The Soviet Union, and they got into this bizarre tit-for-tat nuclear weapons. They were willing to blow each other up, destroy their countries, their families, their loved ones, because they had a uniform on. Because when you put a uniform on, a lot of people, 90% or more, become different creatures. They're no longer a human, right? And what the United Kingdom done, of course, was just revolting. It was revolting. They literally waited for the winds. They had dozens of planes flying, determining the weather. And when the winds were blowing right across Australia population areas, that's when they done their nuclear test. They also detonated over 700 dirty bombs. So they used, high-level radioactive uranium-235s and plutoniums and that, and actually wrapped them in conventional explosives and detonated them in, of course, native land in Australia. There's just absolute contempt for the natives we see in the nuclear industry is something exceptional too. Worldwide, we've seen that consensus. And the 31 safety test of Operation Vixen in Maralinga. Safety test. So if Russia and Ukraine exchanges 31 nuclear weapons, is that a nuclear war? Is the radioactive fallout, will people perceive the radioactive fallout as a nuclear war? So then, of course they will. So how is this not a nuclear war? And the problem is, a lot of those people that were involved in that are still alive. And the last thing they want is their families to realize that they're actually monsters, right? Because these people are monsters. They can say whatever they want. They can say, well, we've done it for national security. We've done it for... It's simply not true. It's unbelievably contempt for humanity, 8 million species. And they once you put a uniform on the majority of people, they turn into sadistic animals. There's been many, many test experiments where you give a normal person no training, a uniform, put them in charge, and they turn into monsters. 9 out of 10 every time. France conducted 200 nuclear attacks upon themselves and everybody else. 210, some of them weapons were massive, by the way. The final test reputed to be more intended to prevent the weapon from falling into the hands of generals' rebellion against the French colonial rule than for tests. So they blew up nuclear weapons because they were afraid that the people they were poisoning would get their hands on it and attack them back. The People's Republic of China conducted 45 tests. These are wars. 45 nuclear weapons going off is a war. If Russia and China exchanges, or Russia and Ukraine, I should say NATO, exchanges 45 nuclear weapons, that's a war, isn't it? Are we going to call that a war? Are we going to call that a fucking test too? Excuse the French Canadian. And so there's this incredible Operation Smiling Buddha for India's first nuclear test. And they got their technology from shitheads in Canada. Operation Smiling Buddha. They took one of the most religious icons and turned it into, like they did with the beautiful tropical paradises, and just destroyed it, right? That's all they're good at. It's just, they have got the mentality of 6-year-olds fighting over a toy. Around 24 nuclear cold tests were carried out by Pakistan. These remain unannounced and classified until the year 2000. Who knows how many they've done that we don't know about worldwide. You can be sure there's an absurd amount. And Pakistan responded publicly by testing 6. And then France tried to sneak in a couple of nuclear tests at the same time, right? And they got caught. That was in the 1990s, I believe. North Korea got no choice. United Nations, 195 countries attacking them, which is the League of Nations. They call them United Nations, one of the biggest crimes imaginable. United Nations is not united. It's just 195 gangs that are out of control. It should never. How is it even possible without referendums in each country to participate in this kind of genocide? It's unbelievable. But every country should do the same thing, where they should have a RECA, Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. Every country should have it. And then the atmosphere testing that the Americans done the most of that was shocking. I shouldn't say the Americans, the American nuclear industry. the traitorous nuclear industry, no matter which country you look at, the best way to describe it is insane. But they also use nuclear weapons in munitions. And they call it depleted uranium, but it's far from depleted. It's depleted in about 2 billion years. Then they got all these submarines they sank. They got all, the British went out and dumped it over the side of the boats for 36 years. Every day out there in these cargo ships rolling 45-gallon drums over the side of the boat. And in the end, it didn't sink, they shot. These are worldwide nuclear tests with a yield of 1.4 megatons. 1.4. So that was the minimum, of 1.4. And you can see the Soviet Union, October the 30th, 50 megatons. That was 3,800 Nagasaki bombs going at the same time. So the Soviet Union, December 24th, Christmas Eve, was equal to 1,900 Nagasaki bombs going off at the same time. These are nuclear war. If NATO / Ukraine and China detonates 1,900 Nagasaki type size bombs, is that not a nuclear war? Are we going to call that a nuclear war or not? You got the U.S. love doing barges, love doing ground airdrops. These are nasty radioactive fallout, every one of these things, right? Castle Romeo. Imagine using the name Romeo in a nuclear weapon. Imagine calling a spot where you're destroying paradise a bikini. Oh my goodness. The level of evilness that we see in the legacy industry, that didn't go away. Their children had jobs, and their children got jobs in this industry, and the current generation, or the inbreeds, or the entitled bunch, are trying to kill the planet now. And what they done to Christmas Island, the United States drop on Christmas Island, 7.7 megatons. June 27, 1962. As if Christmas Island didn't suffer enough from the British. Why did they attack all these tropical paradises, these nurseries of the oceans, these incredible, unbelievable, magical places? These were magical places. Like, these are fairy tale places. Not anymore. These are nightmare places now. These are disease factories for the species. And so they contaminate the entire planet. So they're not going to do compensation for the entire planet, but at least do it for the victims close to the nuclear bombs, for goodness sakes. At least do it for the victims. Time is running out, so you got 3 days. I don't know if it's the exact date, but as far as I understood it, it was the 7th, right? The Radiation Exposure Compensation Act expires on June the 7th, in 3 days. And like I would have, if they didn't flog the shit out of my video on me last night, knock off 22 minutes from my video, knock down my router, took my router offline twice. They wrecked my computer twice, my operating system, because they were worried I was going to influence people that might have done something good. And if you're in a position of authority and you're part of the people that can pursue and promote the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act in government or parliament or Congress, why won't you, right? They throw so much money at stupid fusion, which will never come to fruition, at the idiotic small modular reactors, which they all acknowledge will never come to fruition. It's simply just to drain the bank. It's the same thing with the nuclear disease factories, as nuclear power plants. But you can't throw a lousy few billion dollars for the victims. Most of them are already dead. What about the few that remain? Japan was a good example of this, right? Where 3 years ago, or no, 2 years ago or so, Prime Minister Suga, because they got so many prime ministers, you barely keep track of them anymore, had finally decided, because there's not very many victims left from Nagasaki, Hiroshima, right? But they've been fighting for 74 years for medical, not compensation, but just medical cure. And they've been denied that entire time. And finally they said, there's only a few left. Let's give them compensation and be done with it. Way too late, obviously, right? I mean, why would you build your cities back on a bomb crater? So they can study them like lab rats. And so the people that done that are the same ones that are trying to deny the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, because that might come back to haunt them for other things, right? So the studies, we covered this last night, but because they took 22 minutes off my video, we're forced to cover it again. Toxicity of inhaled plutonium dioxide in beagle dogs. So that study was 144 beagle dogs and puppies. Who knows where they got all of them, I wonder. Deaths from radiation occurred 1.5 to 5.4 years. This is a very important story we're going to cover right here. And tumors of the lungs, the skeleton, and the liver occurred beginning with 3 years after exposure. This was a single inhalation. They let them live out their life, and then they done a statistic on them. So bone tumors, 93 dogs, were the most common cause of death out of 144 dogs, was skeleton tumors. And for children and small animals and everything else, that means you're mutating stem cells also. So it's a much more insidious, any of these radiation deaths are very insidious deaths. The damage, and then they try to murder you with more radiation in the hospital. They try to radiate you to cure you from the murderous radiation they already got inside of you. Like nothing screams insane like the nuclear does it? Let me get back on it. So 144 beagle dogs and puppies, they all died from tumors. Lots of them had 3 tumors, the bone, the lung, and the liver tumors. Bone tumors, 93 dogs were the most common cause of death. Lung, and this is so important. I got 3 more clicks to explain it to you. Lung tumors found in 46 dogs were the second most common cause of death. And what's the biggest cause of death in the United States? Lung tumors. Oh, that's radon, Dana. No, it's not, moron. We're already acclimated to radon through genetic superior selection, right? That's why we exist. Lung tumors in 46 dogs were the second most common cause of death. And liver tumors were found in 20 dogs, but were the cause of death in only 2 dogs because the skeleton tumor killed them quicker. Okay. Now, the same Loveless Respiratory Research Institute, which is the Navy, U.S. Navy, lap dogs, and Dr. Raymond Gilmedy in particular, he had done 96 studies or something on beagle dogs and beagle puppies and monkeys and that, mostly beagle dogs and beagle puppies. And his abstract showed curium isotopes are the major byproduct in the radiated nuclear fuel rod. So they're the major byproduct of the gammas, the alphas, and neutrons, and the betas, not just beta. Because it's a beta, right? But when it decays, it's not a beta. The whole story is insane. It's impossible to... The only way it can exist is because they control your universities and your medias in increments over many decades, and now they got complete control. So the curium isotopes need lead shielding 20 times thicker than plutonium. And don't forget what the plutonium done to the beagle dogs and the beagle puppies. Okay. So the curium is the major byproduct, not iodine-131, not cesium-137. See, you can find them, and then you can do a mathematical equation, extrapolate all the other isotopes per se, ratios. So a Japanese study showed the kidney accumulated the most radioactive cesium by far, but it's not just cesium you have to worry about, and the highest levels of any tissue inside of a cow was in the kidneys. Okay, but it was discovered that the human kidneys are at least 50 times less efficient than an animal kidney at removing the plutonium. And the biggest byproduct of radiated fuel rods is wherever you got, for every plutonium, you're going to have infinitely more curium isotopes on a scale that I'm afraid to even say out loud because it's such a terrifying thought. So, which means that all the dogs died, and the dogs are 50 times, not 50%, but 50 times more efficient at removing plutonium than a human kidney is. So when they say at the bottom that the finding dogs suggest similar dose-related biological effects could be expected in humans accidentally exposed to uranium-238 or 238 plutonium, that's simply not true, because the human is 50 times more vulnerable than the dog is for the same dose. And so it was very trendy, right? I got some crazy pictures coming up later. Radioactive pollution in Athens, Greece due to Fukushima. Cesium-137 Japanese fir needles, because a lot of the needles, they'll chop the tips off the needles and use it for a tea. And that's the quickest way to get leukemia. Start drinking that stuff because you start producing so much white blood cells because you're so radioactive, so much poison in you. Your body attacks every single anthropogenic man-made atom with white blood cells for the rest of your life. So if you cut your finger, your body doesn't attack that for the rest of your life. It fixes it in a couple of days, right? And then your red blood cell, which carries oxygen and nutrition throughout your body, comes back up. But imagine that every time you got a cut, it never healed. And your body attacked it every day for the rest of your life with white blood cells. So your whole life, every cut you ever get in your entire life never heals. Imagine that. Because that's what radiation really is like, right? Difference in the effects of radiation on the abundance of animals in Fukushima and Chernobyl. Be careful of some of these studies. You see Timothy Musser? I wouldn't trust that as far as I can throw it. Welcome atomic soldiers in Nevada deserts. And, Las Vegas, you would get your postcards with the nuclear bomb in the background. And they had packages where you can go there and rent a hotel room. And they had spots there where you can sit and watch the nuclear test. You knew when the nuclear test was going to happen. It was really a circus, wasn't it? Fukushima fallout, Northwest German environmental media. A role of eddies in transport of Fukushima-derived cesium isotopes in the ocean. So they really understand the nuances. Right, last night's and tonight's show clearly show they understand all the minutiae, the details of the details. Radiological impact of nuclear power plant accident of freshwater fish in Fukushima. Let's go with another little Bert the Turtle. Has everybody got a turtle shell?
Be sure and remember what Bert the Turtle just did, friends, because every one of us must remember to do the same thing.
We all got a shell to dive into, right?
That's what this film is all about. Duck and cover.
Which is not going to protect you from 1,000 years.
This is an official civil defense film produced in cooperation with the Federal Civil Defense Administration and in consultation with the Safety Commission of the National Education Association.
Produced by Archer Productions, Incorporated.
Ha-ha! In Disneyland, I packed them up. So the problem was that every nuclear test was a nuclear war. The radioactive fallout is the same thing as a nuclear war. Because you can't just say, well, no, it wasn't fired in anger. It was a peaceful nuclear test. So the radioactive fallout is somehow different than radioactive fallout. So unless it's in anger, then the radioactive fallout can't hurt you. They have no argument. They have no way of winning a debate. Literally, they can't win a debate. You'll never see a debate where someone like me is going to sit in front and we're both going to talk about the same subject. They haven't got a hope in hell of winning that debate, right? They're never going to show up. There's no one stupid enough to sit in a debate with someone that's honest. It's simply never going to happen. Fukushima wildlife breeding unaffected by radiation. It's actually wiped out all the species like to suggest, like this is, every time you see New Scientist, you see these despicable fake studies, right? Entrance beyond this point constitute consent to search of vehicles entering, leaving, and while within the Nevada proving grounds. These weren't proving grounds, these were disease factories. Temporal variations of dose rate distribution around the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power station using unmanned helicopters. Why are you using unmanned helicopters? Because it's like a banana, Dana. Post-Fukushima complementary safety assessment outcomes from the French fuel cycle facilities. So when you start looking at the radioactive fallout from everything, it's just impossible to imagine this is even conceivable. And now this is the norm for them, right? They're so used to getting away with this omnicide that to them this is normal. This is just another day being a scumbag, right? Transfer factors, effective half-lives of cesium, cesium-134, 137, and different environmental sample types obtained from northern Finland because of Fukushima. So they've studied every facet of the ecosystem. Concentrations in bark and sapwood and heartwood of 3 tree species. These kind of pictures crack me up. And this was the norm. People go out and they would stare at the light. They were encouraged too, right, to get out there, and it was called being patriotic, and that way they can study your children for the next thousands of years. Fukushima lasting legacy is a fear of nuclear power. New Scientist, and New Scientist is exceptionally despicable. We've done entire presentations actually on and debunked every one of their studies. Radioactive impact on the species Northwest Pacific. And now I've done the research expeditions from Fukushima, and you don't want to see that tonight. I can trust me, you don't want to see it. We're out there doing, currently now we're just almost, well, we're set up now to do research in fresh water. Detections of, and that's what we just started this week. And I must admit, the whole system is working pretty darn good. A few little kinks to get out, but we're definitely getting there. And it's not even spring here yet. It's still miserable. But next week it's supposed to finally break. I'm afraid to say that out loud because we're out in the Atlantic Ocean currently, right? And it's a tough gig. But it's a very important keystone area for species. Detection of Fukushima plume within regular Slovenia environmental radioactivity surveys. And so they understand every facet of it is all I can really... I can show you all these studies because that's the actual facts. This is stuff that ERPA and UNSCLEAR and the IPRC and the radiation protection agencies are not going to show you anything that I'm showing you, because that debunks everything they've been saying for their entire legacy. Actual pictures of a nuclear bomb test. And how can we deny that this happened, right? Because that's what they've been doing since the nuclear... They call it a test, but it's obviously a nuclear war. The radioactive fallout is the equivalent of a nuclear war. And because it's so harmful, then we got no choice but to... Measures of ambient dose equivalent rates by walk surveys around Fukushima. So I'm hitting a bunch of those. I'm going to play another little clip coming up. The duck and cover, 37 seconds. Lessons learned from good practices. Well, the only people who work at Fukushima are the homeless, the destitute, the victims of society, the immigrants who don't speak the language. They produce a lot of studies to cover up, right, what's going on. And it costs a lot of money to do those studies. And so rather than take that money and give it to the victims, they just create more victims.
Hey, Bert, come on out and meet all these nice people, please. Oh, all right. We really can't blame you. You see, Bert is a very, very careful fellow. When there's danger, this is the way he keeps from being hurt. Sometimes it even saves his life. That's why these children are practicing to duck and cover just as you do in your school. We all know the atomic bomb is very dangerous. Since it may be used against us, we must get ready for it, just as we are ready for many other dangers that are around us all the time. Fire is a danger.
Fire is a danger. Car accidents, they love doing that, right? They love doing that, connotations. Vertical distribution of iodine-129. The failure from Fukushima was 220 million atoms per liter rainfall in the United States and Canada. A study from Ottawa, Canada. And it was sustained for months, which is enough to saturate the thyroid glands of every species out there, and did, of course. There's not a single flower or a single pollen being produced in North America that's not radioactive. And guess what that means for the pollinators? Vertical distribution of 129 iodine released from Fukushima. Vertical. It infiltrated every facet of the ecosystem. So there's so many studies that how can we deny how bad radiation is, see? Because they don't do the studies on every facet of the ecosystem for something. They're doing it to try to cover it up. They're covering all bases. That's the one thing we see with the nuclear industry. It'll cover all bases. And if there's 1,000 things there that are in their way, they'll tackle every one of them. If there's 100,000, they'll tackle every single one of them in order to have a study saying, look, that never harmed it. And when you look at the people that are doing the studies, you'll see them doing similar types of studies everywhere else. In the paddy fields, temporal changes of radioactive cesium. What about the uranium? What about the plutonium? What about the curium, the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rods? You need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for the plutonium. Right, so they lull you into that complacency of thinking that there's only cesium. And I mean, they're really good at it. The radio xenon in Washington was 450,000 times whatever might have been considered normal. It's all man-made. It's anthropogenic. It's a nasty isotope too, with 10 half-lives. Well, you should have evacuated the Atlantic and the Pacific seaboards, at least for 100 miles inshore too. Even today, even in the future. Because this stuff is liberated back into the ecosystem through evaporation, through crashing, the waves crashing on the rocks. And, you know, there's lots of studies of insects up to 200 miles inland are acclimated to more salt in their diet because of the sea spray makes its way about 200 miles inland, see? And so that means the radiation liberated from the ocean will have the same attributes. 134 cesium, 134 cesium, 137 abnormalities northwest directions from Fukushima. No, the whole country. If you want to know about that stuff, you got to go into my playlist and watch the videos that I selected for education-wise. Method for rapid screening of strontium-19 edible plant samples collected near Fukushima. For every 130, let's got a caller. Oh, we got James calling in. There you go. Excellent. Hi, James. Welcome.
No, I just
I was waiting for the. I was waiting for the. You were going to do the calm down, Charlie, that time, were you?
Well, that was the whole thing. Like, you survived Operation Long Jump. So I just want to congratulate.
I haven't survived it. I haven't survived it. I haven't survived it yet. They've got me wrecked. They're definitely at me. They're at me, man.
They are.
Yeah, every day too. It's what they got done to me is terrifying. Go ahead, James. I'm sorry, buddy.
Well, no, it's terrifying for all of us. So we're watching this. I feel helpless. I don't know what the hell to do about this whole situation with the Tokyo Bureau. Chicago Division. I tried looking it up.
Yes, it's been going on for so long. You know the routine, right? Obviously. You've been there and listened to it over and over. The truth, right?
They're absolutely terrified of you.
Yeah, because I don't get mad. I get even. I just get more educated, right? I become more articulated.
Well, you know, I wanted to bring up one other thing because you know, something in the water brought up like how you created some great stickers and things, and that's stuff that you should have on your shop. And hell, I ordered a T-shirt like weeks ago, and I still haven't gotten it. And I think it's because they've got my IP address, and they're like, "Yeah, this is the asshole who like said, why are you censoring Dana? And you guys are a bunch of, you know." I guess they just put me on their crap list and just send me the shirt. So
yeah, no kidding. Yeah, sorry to hear that.
But
I gotta start up another site too, right? A different site. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I wanted it all just, you know, the other day I went to the grocery store wearing the "Nuclear is a Hate Crime" shirt. And I could tell you. I mean, the look.
They don't know what to make of it, see?
No one said anything. They didn't say anything, but, you know, it was like the eye contact that was made by a few people that were like they weren't sure if they wanted like punch me in the face or
my God,
what. You know, that kind of look, right?
They're very descriptive shirts, though, right? They're pretty descriptive shirts. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. And it's like, you know, people just don't realize, like, what you have shown so far tonight, what we have shown, like, all those 1950s, you know, radiation safety videos that people were half at the time watching back in the day.
Yeah, terrifying.
You explained it very well.
Yeah, no, it's... I got so much of it, I don't know if I should post it up on my website or what to do, right? I got so much. You still there, James?
Yeah, I'm here, but I was just thinking, like, how so many people are just so, they have no idea. I mean, they just really don't get it. And
it's social engineering, yeah.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
It definitely is. But,
nasty social engineering.
Anyway, hang in there, Dana. We all love you, and, you know, we'll see this through.
Love you too, buddy. Thank you. Good stuff.
All right.
Always good to hear from you, James. God bless, my friend. Yeah. Okay. That's James Lucid, you know, in the comments section. It's not his real last name, but it's close. Close enough. It's actually a great handle, right? Lucid. Right? Because it invokes some confidence, right? And so the radioactive fallout, so like I'm recording the show, I'm playing videos, I've got an extra video playing, which is the radioactive fallout. You don't see my system is not struggling or going crazy or nothing. Right? They goosed my site last night. They took my video and chopped off 22 minutes of it. Because I was actually really good last night. But because they've done that to me now, I got to record every fucking show. Then after the show, now I got to convert it so I can upload it over at BitChute, which has a limit of 2 gigabytes. Because, you know, when I do these shows, they're going to be 35, 40, 2-hour shows around 60, 70 gigabytes. And so it's very intensive. And it just takes a long time for me to convert it. And then I got to upload it. I got no choice, right? It'll be up at my BitChute because, you know, at 12 hours they're going to do something to this video. At every video after 12 hours, they typically make it longer because we believe they're putting software into it, and they're chopping their words. They're probably using deep fake stuff in the video after 12 hours, having me not say things or saying things that are not true. And another thing I'm going to start doing is a timer. And so the shows are going to have a timer. And bear with me here. I'll put a timer up in the corner. And so we'll know then where to chop in my video, right? That's coming soon. because nuclear won't leave me alone. They're going to force me to do all kinds of other stuff to mitigate what they're doing. I can play the fucking game too. And for every strontium-90 produced, there's 100 times... I'm sorry, for every cesium-137, there's 100 strontium-90, which is like, it's a beta, so it's the same as plutonium. It's the same, not exactly, but it's vicious anyway. So it's nasty for all the birds, insects, animals, kids, and everything else, and elderly and stuff like that, and you, and the other 8 million species. And after 1,000 days, the ratio is 100 to 1 after a nuclear meltdown, for instance, of strontium-90 to 137. And 137 is very prolific, right? So like you've seen all the animals, right? I showed you that earlier. And where am I to here? So you've seen all the animals, and so they knew that these people were going to get the same effects as the animals did in the nuclear explosions, the radioactive fallout. They knew that. And they also knew as military, then they've already consented to be experimented on. And it was just this unbelievable, it was more about an axis of evil. That's the only way to describe the nuclear industry, really. Development of a high-resolution alpha particle imaging system for detection of plutonium particles from the Fukushima Daiichi power plant. And so, by the way, the video I was trying to play at the end of it last night, I recorded it today, I condensed it, and I'll play the video at the end of it, right? So it'll be just like this video here.
But finally, their morale cracked open by American power. The first masses of Japanese soldiers began to give up voluntarily. Japan's fanatical suicide corps in desperation air attacks inflicted heavy damage on American naval forces off Okinawa. This was kamikaze. It was sensational, but it could never stop the Allied advance. B-29s, scourge of Japan's home islands, mighty engines of destruction bringing home the lesson of Pearl Harbor. From hard-won Okinawa, from the carrier-based planes of the 3rd and 5th Fleets, Japan came under the inevitable reign of ruin. Allied sea forces moving up to the Japanese home island shelled the mainland almost without opposition. Admiral Halsey's ranging naval might was helping to hammer the enemy to his knees. But there was to come. The unimaginably destructive atomic bomb perfected by Allied scientists. First mission, the industrial city of Hiroshima. Second mission, the port of Nagasaki. Japan had its choice, complete surrender or complete ruin. At Potsdam, even as they laid the foundations for a stable European peace, Clement Attlee, Harry Truman, and Joseph Stalin had decided on common action against Japan. As agreed at Yalta, Russia joined the Allies in war on the last remaining Axis enemy. Japan's stronghold in Manchuria was attacked. For Emperor Hirohito and for Japanese militarism, the war was lost. Japan sued for peace. In Washington, Secretary of War Stimson and Secretary of State Burns hurried to the White House with Secretary of Navy Forrestal. The United States Cabinet, meeting with President Truman, studied Japan's surrender messages in full coordination with the governments of Britain, China, and Russia, and other allies.
And then they turned them into a weapon against humanity, now haven't they? Prediction of groundwater contamination of cesium from Fukushima. in the Kanto district, which is right by Tokyo, right? So they got all these studies, all these years, all these different events. They studied every facet of everything. And yet today when you ask, you'll see the experts on TV saying, well, there's no proof, scientists are still on the fence. Of course, they studied all of that on the fences too. U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, Nevada test site. So there's no such thing as a test site because radiation doesn't respect any fences or borders. Detection of radio xenon in Darwin. It was 450,000 becquerels per cubic meter of air. So it's impossible not to breathe it in, right? For any species, let alone humans. Dispositional fluxes and resident time of atmospheric radioiodines. For every 131, there's 10 times more 132, 30 times more iodine 133, 31 times more iodine 129. Right? And so they don't tell you that. Experimental investigations relevant for hydrogen fission products issued, raised by the Fukushima. So Fukushima, I got one folder there with 500 studies I still haven't got to. This is insane. Now the official story is they say it didn't even happen. But we're very worried about the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act sunsetting in 3 days. And I'm not finding any documentation saying anything different. In fact, I'm not finding any advocates out there trying to educate the so-called authorities, whoever they may be. I'm not sure who specifically. No, I'm not talking about the nuclear industry authorities. These are not authorities. These are monsters. I'm talking about the government who are in a position to extend the RECA Act. Well, it should never sunset because it's a perpetual victims, right? The radiation's never going away, so why should the RECA go away, you know? And you can see the nuclear explosion in the background in this picture. Isn't that special? And like a lot of these hotels had packages. You can fly there or drive there and you can watch the nuclear explosions. That's how common it was. First successful isolation of radioactive particles from soil. Again, this is a fake study. There was 29 million atoms per square meter of soil in Tokyo. So it's very dishonest when you see those types of studies. So that's what I mean. A lot of the studies are meant to downplay it, misrepresent it. And if you go look at my playlist, you'll see the numbers are just terrifying, the real numbers. These are the strangest pictures you're ever going to see. Like people just, they're very complacent. But when you see all the animals on the decks of the boats, they're doing the same thing here. But we watched that video earlier. The scientists absolutely, unequivocally knew this is a very bad spot for anybody to be. So there was this group psychosis, is the only way you can probably, is the only way you can really describe the madness of what we're talking about. 137 ceasing distribution of soil and trees and forest ecosystems after the radioactive fallout. So it sequesters in the forest worldwide. And then when you have forest fires, you liberate the radiation back into the ecosystem. Even if you don't have the forest fire for 1,000 years, when you finally have it, you're going to liberate the radiation sequestered into the ecosystem, the forest, back into the environment. It's a perpetual disease factory. And the fuel pools are perpetual machines. They perpetually produce radioactive fallout. And the fallout never goes away. And the majority of these sites are surrounded by farms. 137 cesium distribution in soil and trees and forest ecosystems after the radioactive fallout. Comparison studies between southern Finland and Fukushima. Now, I do believe that's just a sign we're looking at right there of the explosion. Or maybe that's an explosion. Who knows? I don't know for sure. But again, these were postcards. A lot of these were postcards. Come on down and watch the nuclear explosion in a nuclear wasteland. It's shocking how many of these studies, like behavior of radioactive cesium during incineration of radioactivity contaminated waste from decontamination activities in Fukushima. Like, that's the most bizarre, the most, what are you talking about? Why not just burn down the Fukushima prefecture? Just burn the whole prefecture. Why, it's the same thing, what we're talking about. Like, to pick up the radiation and incinerate it, and what was it, 21 incinerators that they built? We covered a story on that like last month or something. I dug up from the archives, where they had 21 or 29 incinerators built to burn radioactive material. And that the ash was so radioactive they couldn't get rid of it. And so at best is going to be about 4 or 6% left over. So they liberated horrifying, terrifying amounts back into the ecosystem from 21. And the big problem was they don't know how to decommission the incinerators because they're so radioactive. And the pictures we see, these are not like small incinerators. These are like apartment buildings. Like, 6, 7, 8-story apartment buildings. It's like the whole story is insane. And it just seems like, there's no way, right? And I don't blame anybody for thinking that way. I really don't. And like James Cullen, he was talking about Operation Long Jump. And anybody's not familiar with that, that's the attack upon me, is Operation Long Jump. And they call in and tell me, right, you're going to get it now. I remember there were we saved those clips when they call in, that kind of stuff. And I think it was last year or earlier, or late last year, or earlier this year, where they were calling me up and telling me that the Canadian prosecutors are going to be coming after me really soon. I'm in real trouble now. And that might work on other people, but it doesn't work on me. I didn't do nothing wrong. And the world deserves to have at least somebody out there fighting back. And the main thing is, the criteria is you got to be honest. Because you can't educate the population without being honest. And a lot of people ask me, geez, goodness, Dana, how do you're an old man now, you're a broken old man. How do you maintain your memory so clean? Well, it's simple, I don't lie. Telling the truth is a lot easier to remember than telling a lie, see? Fukushima leaks will keep fisheries, leaks. It always offends me when I hear the word leaks because the buildings are gone. New scientists, of course, the scum of the earth, new scientists, they're despicable, isn't it, what they've done? Yeah, you can go up, you can get a nice room with a view of nuclear testing, and you can get to taste the radioactive fallout with your breakfast in the morning, I suppose. Like, how can you live there and see that in the distance and not jump into your car and drive away at high speeds? How does that work? Because if I'm there, if I'm in a spot like this and I'm looking in the distance, see a nuclear test, which is a nuclear war, the radioactive fallout is the same as nuclear war, I'm getting a 6 out of there, right? Lessons learned in future accidents from the risk perspectives. Human error blamed from Fukushima meltdown. It's not human error, right? They try everything in order to stop the industry from having any kind of bad connotations whatsoever. They'll produce 100 studies on the one subject to try to browbeat you into agreeing with them instead of being honest and agreeing with the reality. And this study here on size-dependent behaviors of cesium-bearing particles, well, they're all the same fucking size. Like an atom is an atom is an atom. They're all the same size. You can't filter out one atom and leave the other atoms. It doesn't work that way. We don't have that technology. It simply doesn't exist. It never will either. The humans are never going to conquer that one. But yet that's what they want you to believe with the ALP system in Fukushima, that they're able to separate this atom or that atom from the catastrophic amount of radiation in a sample. It simply can't be done. The science is really clear on this. And the studies that they produced, the majority of them meant to downplay it. Oh yeah, look, right, women out there sunbathing, men out there sunbathing. They're all staring at the nuclear bomb and too fucking stupid to run away. Right, because the media was so effective back then at brainwashing people and manipulating people and deceiving people and coercing people. And this is the proof, right? Like if I was there, all you would see is a little blur in the camera because I'd be running editor. There's zero possibility I'm staying there. I'm gone. Assessing the impact of the Fukushima nuclear disaster on policy and the public sphere. Like studies like that, you kind of lose faith in humanity, right? With the USS Ronald Reagan, they actually sandblasted the decks and the vent systems on it 3 different times to try to get rid of the radioactive fallout from the decks. Because it becomes imbued with the material itself. Arrival of radionuclides released by Fukushima to the Canary Islands. The world has no concept, eh? So Bert the Turtle, what would he do right there? Duck and cover? Like, it's such a stupid... Only the nuclear industry can dream up something so stupid. And the majority of these studies are meant to downplay Fukushima. All these people, if not, 90% of the studies are meant to downplay the effect. That's the only reason those studies are produced. And they got studies to back up the study, to back up the study, to back up the study. How can you not run away? Because the media is so good at making people complacent, right? The schools, universities included. Tracking the complete revolution of surface westerlies over the northern hemisphere using radionuclides emitted from Fukushima. Well, let me give you an example of that because it's hard for me. It's hard for me not to. So this is Neptunian 239 dispersal based on 20 days. So you get the whole planet's covered in 20 days. And now this particular model is based on venting. It's not actually based on nuclear meltdowns or the loss of the inventories of the reactors. Because if you put that there, you'll never stop screaming. Radiocesium fallout in the grasslands. Mass marine source term following Fukushima Daiichi. Like, it wiped out the species on the west coast between Vancouver, British Columbia, and Alaska. We spent 6 years doing research expeditions. It's an extinction event, right? But let's go back to the RECA, Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. And the idea of showing you all these studies is because you need to look at the big picture, right? And this is just a fraction of that big picture. That's the scariest part about the story is this is simply a fraction of a fraction, what you're seeing tonight and last night, of what you should know. And you need to go back and watch all of my Chernobyl anniversary videos. Now, my other site had 1,500 of these presentations on it. Try to wrap your mind around that statement. And they took down in lots of 300 and 400 over the years, right? And then they just closed my site down. And so I have produced a prolific amount of documentation. I always felt that I would educate enough bloggers, because enough bloggers would wander by and get educated, and they would start having a real conversation. And everybody would, come up with solutions. And that didn't happen. They were so good at isolating me. Still going, obviously, very strong today. Because when you look at these videos that I've been doing for over a decade straight, with 23 viewers, like if I was wrapping shit on a stick, I would have 30,000 people here yucking it up, right? Or more. How do you get 15% saying no? Because clearly 1,000 U.S. nuclear tests proved the nuclear industry was determined to contaminating the entire United States of America. Right, that's really clear they done that. Because they covered it up, and we have that evidence. A crime called nuclear power. Nuclear power is every nuclear power plant is a disease factory. The fuel pools are hemorrhaging radiation. So I'm going to play the videos coming up here in a moment. We just got one video to get through. It's about 7 minutes long. And that covers Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Long-range transport of gases iodine-131 and other radionuclides from Fukushima accident to southern Poland. I mean, these pictures scares the shit out of me to see people this complacent. And the only reason they're that complacent is because the nuclear industry didn't tell them the truth. They studied every facet. You actually, like, I've been down the rabbit hole for so long, I'm still shocked by it. I never ever get used to the degree of insane that I see, the absolute madness and depravity that is exhibited by this nuclear industry. It's non-stop nightmarish. And there's so many studies. All I can tell you is they studied every facet of nuclear. There's nothing they didn't study. And what I showed you last night and tonight is not even a fraction of a percent. And it's a lot. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of studies. And so, like, when they say they're on the fence or scientists don't really know for sure what kind of damage is caused by radiation, or radioactive fallout, it's unequivocally a lie. It's the biggest lie matter. It's the biggest breach of academics in human history is what we're talking about. And let's get down to the video here. I'm just going to flash through whatever I got left there. Just so people got a comprehension of we can't possibly cover everything. Well, we can. We've been doing it for over a decade. Every time you see nuclear new scientists, I always say scumbag. Radioactive urine in Fukushima poses small health risk because there was a study coming out where all the children had the radioactive urine. New Scientist sends out one or two of their little puppets and does a study saying it's not harmful, simply just to protect the nuclear industry. They clearly sold their souls to a monster a long time ago. How can you do something like they're doing anyway? How can you live that kind of life? How can you not look over your shoulder every second of every day when you do stuff like that? I can always hold my head up high. I don't hide from anybody. You'll always see my phone number at the beginning of the show. You'll even see the license plates of my vehicles and my trailers and everything else. Or whatever, right? I don't hide anything. I've never done nothing wrong to anybody. I don't have to hide. And pray that they're stupid enough to kill me. Because that might be the only way we'll ever get the truth out, right? Okay, so I'm going to play a video coming up in a moment. So this was last week. We started at the back of the Zodiac, the small Zodiac. And we had to rebuild the back as usual, we got lucky enough to have a little tiny bit of a budget. And, sorry. And so that was Monday, or it was Sunday evening, where I finally put the motors in the back of the little Zodiac. I got 2 4-strokes, right? We welded a winch onto it to make it a lot easier because I'm not very healthy. And I'm struggling every day just to do the basic stuff. But the research is so important to me. And so we got a new jack put on it, welded in the spot. It took me 2 hours to grind and pound and gouge out the other jack and put it in, and then weld in the new jack. And then that battery, I rejuvenated that battery by stealing acid from another battery, because we go through a lot of equipment, right? Okay, that's not it. That's it right there, the video. Okay, so we're going to play this video. I'm going to shut up. And there is some hesitation in this video in a few places. Just ignore it. It's a short compilation of 4 days. We're getting a boat ready. We built a trailer. We redone the boat. We've done all equipment. And now we finally get to tell the story. So enjoy it. It's a good little video. I screwed up a little bit, but see what we got happening here. It's a success. I'm actually going to have that strap is going to be over here. Instead of putting a snatch block, I might just try that. So I decided to go with the snatch block. Saturday afternoon, I'm just going to plant it down. I'm going to dig a hole while it's wet out there. Get the winch on. Get that welded on. No one's going to steal that while I'm out on the boat. And then we got the block and tackle. Everything is finally hooked up. Everything's wired. We got all the lights on both sides wired. Yeah, we're wired. Oh, what have we got done here? Backwards. Yeah. So we got everything's working. Supposed the way it's supposed to be. We got that battery's charging. You can see the charger underneath there. We got the lights on this side working. I'm miserable, man. We're just going to have to work in the rain from now on. Just not care about the rain anymore. I don't really care. I've been out here getting soaking wet for a few days. I really don't care about the rain, to tell you the truth. I just care about getting out there. And so we got a real screwdriver, and we got attach. We got 2 attached. These guys. Do it upside down. I like it upside. Yeah, and so I'm pretty happy with it. So that's pretty tight. That's pretty tight. Doesn't even move, eh? Not even a millimeter. Sometimes the picture doesn't quite cut it, does it? So I got the first stitches into that, and what I'll do now is I'll go over it much better. I gotta put it through that end a couple of 3 or 4 times. In order to do that, you need pliers, right? We're getting it. I worked 3 days in the rain. Alright, so we got, that's the only way it's going to get done. We got that one stitched up once down and halfway back. I'm going to start this one now though, because it's almost 5 o'clock. And we'll get 2 patterns on that. We'll get 1 more half on that. Alrighty. So that one's tied in over here. tie it in over there. I folded it over. Right, I folded it over to tie it in. Not hard to see how much work I done around this corner. Because you had to sew up that right. Install your lights. Yeah. Did a lot here, struggled. Same thing here. Yeah, even the floor in the shed is just soaking wet. I used a wet and dry vac to try to keep it to a minimum. I got a set of lights and mounts, cables and stuff like that for, I think I paid $3 for it, or $4. That's why we got a cabin. We just got to get everything set up and go for it. I'm just a little bit worried about the deck. The wood is old, chipped. I got screws everywhere on the deck, and those rails might be a problem because so I might put a sheet of plywood to rise it up just a few and give it a smoother contact. Ideally, you like to have it on the plywood as you're dragging it up through the water, so the plywood will be hooked up to the winch and just pull it up without scraping the bottom along. That's maybe the better solution. I got a piece of plywood there. So now we got backup lights. Good question now is, did I get the switch right? And then the other side is pointing straight back. That'll light up everything on the behind. Get everything working. Now the only thing I haven't got working, but it shouldn't be an issue, is the two motors. Monday, June the 3rd. Just gonna hook up the gas line. The boat in the water. Right. We are in the water. Let's give the motors a try. It's the big moment. Okay, got one running. I got the other one running. Just starting them. But I'm pretty happy. There's a few problems. We'll go back and see if we can fix them. I can't run with it to choke. She'll cut out on me. I think it just needs to warm up, but yeah, the audio is not that great. I didn't realize that. It was great before I dubbed it. Now it's not that great. I'll make sure to double check it the next time. I should listen to that part. Up on the trailer. I'm not sure if I got a leak underneath or it was just water gathered up. Yeah, it might be a leak in the bottom of it. I can fix it. But it might be just water gathered up because it's sitting outdoors for last week or no, 4 or 5 days. So when I finally rose the motor up, gave it a shot of gas, any water up front finally ran to the back. Maybe that's what I'm seeing. If not, I'll fix it. No worries. I'll get there. And then I know, like, I'm using the twine I'm using for sewing is the wax twine for sails that I used to use repairing sails on the sailboat. And but because like where those tiers are to, there's strategic points, and so I needed something super strong. And I know it looks bad because I'm not a professional or nothing, but I can assure you it's not going to come apart, right? And I need something that's going to hold the positions. Alrighty, so last Thursday James Lucid donated $200, and Kevin G donated $30 a couple days ago, yesterday. And we thank them very, very much, because that's how we manage to, the money comes in and we get a little bit more done. And this thing consumes so much, right? That's the sad part of it, is we could have done so much more if they didn't censor the daily that Amina had to support, right? But as it is, we are still in business. And because my whole operation is pretty friggin' old now, a lot of my equipment is very old. But I've done the maintenance on everything. I've been very methodical on oil changes and filters and greasing and stuff like this, and getting rust off things and spraying it to protect it each year. I go through a ridiculous amount of expendables, right, in order to keep everything functional for each year. Because I think years ahead that what happens if we don't have much support, how do we keep doing the research? So what you're looking at now was we just rebuilt everything. Now we're ready to do research the whole spring, summer, and fall. That's the intentions, right? And the same thing next year and the same thing the year after is we're going to research the species, basically. And unfortunately, what we're going to see is not going to be very charming. Okay, so that's the video. Let's come over to the poll for a minute. We're going to end the poll. And you can see I got no views, very few likes. Bless your hearts that do show up. I got 35 votes, and I'm censored on top of that, so there's probably more than what we're seeing there. But for probably the most important topic in human history, it's terrifying how much censorship is put against me. But I expect that. I'm aware that's how it works for these people, because that's what cowards do, right? So does 1,000 U.S. nuclear tests prove the nuclear industry was determined to contaminate the entire United States of America? Like, how do you deny that? How can you deny that that's not true, right? That's the... Well, the boat doesn't... The trailer is... Because I'm going into these very rare places. Very rare to find a boat launch. So a lot of times I'm going to be in a weird spot. That's why we got a big heavy-duty trailer. And a lot of times I'm not going to be able to get the boat. I'm going to have to put the boat in the water, then bring the motors over and put them on the boat. So, which is things I probably shouldn't be doing, but we'll make the adjustment on each case. Okay, what else was I going to say? Okay, so this video is going to show up over at BitChute in an unmolested format from the nuclear industry, because I'm recording it. I'll go in and convert it, and I got the proper software to convert it from 70 gigabytes to less than 2 gigabytes and still be incredible quality. And so 12 hours later, if you want to rewatch the video, I recommend you go to my Dana Durnford BitChute channel and watch it there, because they're going to do something to this video after 12 hours, and we talk about this every single day. And not because we want to, but because that's the reality. All right, have a great night. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. And we're going to be covering the RECA again tomorrow night and the night after. And maybe even a special show on Friday if they don't renew it. Because I think this is important enough. Dedicating a few days to it is not asking very much. Have a great night. Have a great day tomorrow. We'll see everybody on the other side. Have a great night, everybody.
There will soon be an end to this cold and wicked war, when those hard-headed communists get what they're looking for. Only one thing that will stop them, and their atrocious fun. If General MacArthur drops a atomic bomb. Now over in Korea, our boys have fought and fell, but they died just like heroes amid a many shot and shell. They had their hands tied behind them and were murdered by the score, by those dirty-minded communists who started this sad war. They'll be fired dust and metal to the ground. If there's any commies left, they'll be all on the run. If General MacArthur drops a atomic bomb. Old hard-headed Joe will be feeling mighty blue when he finds out it's bitten off more than he can chew. For suppression will be ended and the job will be well done if General MacArthur drops a atomic bomb. To stop those murdering fiends, and he'll make them sorry for their underhanded schemes. Just leave it to the general, for he really has the nerve to give those no-good communists just what they deserve. There'll be fire, dust, and metal flying all around, and the radioactivity will burn their playhouse down. If there's any commies left, they'll be all on the run if General MacArthur drops a atomic bomb.